We are on to game number 2 of the Women's World Chess Championship match between reigning Women's World Champion Tan Zhongyi and the challenger Ju Wenjun. The first game was drawn, and now we have the champion Tan with the white pieces. And let's see how she gets along with her first try on the white side. She plays c4, the English opening, e5, knight c3, and well, as you know, many times the English opening tends to resemble a Sicilian with colors reversed. And after bishop b4, we have a sort of a Rossolimo Sicilian with colors reversed. And here white plays a somewhat rare move. I mean, knight d5 is the main move. You play g3, queen c2, number of moves, but she plays d3. So it seems like they're settling on playing kind of with colors reversed, but of course white having the extra tempo. Black takes on c3 and d6. g3 by white. Yeah, usually you're fianchettoing in the English. And now f5. And this is a very solid setup for black. You get rid of the black square bishop and you put a bunch of pawns on black squares. And this, you know, sort of tones well with your other bishop. Bishop to d2, knight f6, rook b1, pressure on b7, so c6. Black is still very solid and very flexible, but okay, let's finish development. Knight f3 and queen c7. Probably this is some kind of prophylaxis against a move like c5 at some stage, which would undermine e5. That's my guess here. So queen c7, queen e7 is also natural, but Ju Wenjun puts her queen on c7. Castles by both sides, getting their king to safety. And now a bishop to g5, which I believe is a novelty. But here, yeah, looks like c5 might be an interesting move, suggested by the computer. But bishop g5 was the move played. And this doesn't seem to give black any big problems. You played knight b to d7, and after knight d2 and h6, you're forcing white to take a decision with his bishop. And once you take on f6, you sort of, you know, relieve things for black. We got this knight nicely out, and now our bishop is open to be utilized on this diagonal. e4. The bishop comes out. Very natural play by black. It seems like it's easier to play the black position in a way. Bishop h3. Okay, we have a pin, but the natural move, queen to d7. We have some trades. Bishop takes, queen takes. And yeah, now this is attacked, but white can take on b7, but decides not to do so. It's quite possible that taking on b7 would have been the right choice here, just to try to simplify things. For instance, a line like, let's say rook takes b7, queen takes, and then some simplification like knight b3. Okay, we can take something off, let's say c3, we take on d6 then. Okay, black could have also taken on d6, but here it looks like we're you know, very close to getting a lot of things off the board, and I mean white can't be too unhappy here. So maybe she should have gone for simplification here, but instead we see knight to e4. Okay, also offering black simplification with knight takes e4, takes, and we can take on b7 or even d6. But Ju Wenjun had other ideas. He retreated with the queen, defending the pawn on b7, and in doing so keeping the better pawn structure. So after queen b3, knight takes e4, d takes e4, and rook f7. We're defending nicely here along the 7th rank. And yeah, if we can defend our base like this, our base pawn of our chain, we can still keep going with Rook A to F8 and trying to maybe increase the pressure on the king side. In some extreme cases, ideas of Queen H3, maybe pushing Harry. Some chances on the king side. Overall, because of the pawn structure, we have to say that black is slightly better here. Rook after D1 was played. Okay, there's this pawn and the one on D6 also for black to contend with, but she plays not Queen G4. Ditching the pawn on D6, but after Queen to E2, we have to do something about this. Here probably Queen B2 was the best move. When okay, we take on C4 or E4. I'm not sure which one really. Probably E4 because, well, we have these double pawns here, and still black is slightly better. Not much, but after the move played in the game at the Queen E2, we saw Rook F1, and this is a bit passive. Rook A to F8, big pressure on F2. Tan Zhongyi defends tactically. C5, this introduces a pin, so the rook can't go anywhere. And King H7 unpinning again. And now Queen D1. So this again, defense tactically, we can't take on F2. Rook takes, Queen takes E2, and Queen takes F8. So instead, Ju Wenjun took on A2. So equal material, but black is keeping the pressure here. White still has some weaknesses, and black has a nice passed A pawn. Queen B1, Queen to C4. In one move, we're probing like all of the white weaknesses. Rook to D2 and A5. Nothing wrong with taking the pawn either, but the pawn isn't going anywhere, so A5 first. Queen to B6. Now we take the other one, Queen takes C3. And this should be close to winning for black. It's been a very nicely played game by Ju Wenjun. But let's see what happened. Rook B2, H5. Like I mentioned earlier, this is always an idea to push this pawn. And if you get it to H3, then we can introduce ideas of simply giving checkmate. So white has to be careful. Rook to A2. A4. Tricky move, tricky move. What's the idea here? If we were to take on A4, what's going on? Can you find the winning idea for black? Yes, it's Rook and takes on F2. And the idea is Queen check, and this ends in disaster for white. So you can't take the pawn on A4. What happened instead was Queen to B2. Try and simplify. Ju Wenjun took on C5, and black has an extra pawn. G6. However, after some further moves, turns out that black is starting to lose the thread a little bit. Now we have a rook endgame, double rook endgame, and white has one pawn chain. I mean, these pawns are fine, and it looks like the white rooks can become active, so black has to be very precise to extract anything from this game. King F2, endgame, bring the king. I mean, we want the king as a blockader if we can. B6, Rook A6, and here Wenjun decides to ditch one of her pawns. As general rule, you don't want to be too passive in a rook endgame. Okay, you can play like this, but we can give you some pressure here and then bring the king. Let's say King E2, C5, King D3. Now the king is a nice blockader, and it's hard to make progress because if you play B5, Rook C6 is already attacking this pawn, and with a nice king placement we can take on D4 here, and things might even start turning around here if black isn't careful. So you can't, in general, be passive in rook endgames. We discussed that in another video on this channel where I was analyzing a game from Reddit. So Ju Wenjun decides to ditch the pawn on b6 and pin her hopes on this past d pawn and trying to use the c pawn as backup. Rook a7, trying to get active here. f5, white is trying to get some counterplay, but this pawn isn't really that dangerous because the black king is very well placed to blockade it. d3, this is a much more dangerous pawn because the king can't really blockade just yet. Rook c6, rook a2 check. King has to go up, unfortunately, otherwise you can get in a mating net, like king here, maybe even rook here, threatening a nasty check here. So king f3, and now d2. We have to block with the rook, and yeah, rook check first, and finding then rook d1, have to block with the rook. And rooks in general are not the best blockaders. And unfortunately for white, the play flows very nicely for black here. Rook c2 covers the pawn on c5, so it can come to c3 to 8 the pawn on d2. Like we said, backup is coming. White tries to ring in the reinforcements on the king side, but it's much slower, as you can see. g4 now, we take, and rook c1. Problems, king e2, trying to defend, but c3 covering the pawn just in time. We see some jacks here, king to g5, and king f3. Again, Tan seems to be a strong tactical player because a very cheeky trap here. If rook takes d1, then rook check, king here. Turns out you can't escape this perpetual. But Ju Wenjun was up to the task. She avoided this trap, played rook g8. King has to go back to e2, and now rook h8. And yeah, nasty things are happening. Threatening to take, in some cases rook h2. Rook d6 was played, but after rook takes d1, king takes d1, rook h1. Tan Zhongyi had to resign. I mean, where do you put the king? This game is over. Let's say king here, we give a check, and then we queen our pawn. And that's all she wrote. So with this nice win with the black pieces, Ju Wenjun takes the lead in the Women's World Championship match. 1.5. And I do hope you join me in the next video from this match. And I'll see you there. Bye bye.